You're ready to assemble the shaker peg shelf when you have the shelf board complete, the wall plate complete, and you've got your two brackets. And when I mean complete, everything is done and everything is finished sanded to 220. We're going to screw our project together, and what I've got here is I got a sampling of a bunch of different types of screws. There are just so many screws out there. These are all kind of about the same size, but they all have different applications. So it matters what you're screwing into, what tool you're going to use to actually attach these things. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to use something called a drywall screw. So right there, that is a drywall screw. And so the covering that's covering probably your walls is sheetrock. And what happens, this is a drywall screw. It was developed for putting up drywall, but now we use it a lot in lots of different applications, including woodworking. What happens here, it's got a nice coarse thread to bite into softer materials. The threads go all the way up to near the head, and this is what we call a bugle tip. Right, so you can see the top of it. It's kind of got the shape of like a horn on top. All right, so that is a coarse drywall screw, and right there, when you see the plus sign, okay, that's what we call a Phillips head. So we'd use a Phillips head screwdriver. Right there's a Phillips head screwdriver. We'd use a Phillips head screwdriver to drive this screw in. So that's the kind of screw that we're going to use. It's going to work great because we've made our clearance hole in our top board. So this screw will just drop through the outer board, and it will what I call bite into the other board that we're attaching to, the other part. Before we had coarse drywall screws, these are wood screws. So not too long ago, when you used to build, and I say not too long ago, I'm talking maybe 30 years ago, a lot of people, when you put projects together, you would use a wood screw. So the threads are very similar, but here you can see the threads don't go all the way to the top underneath the head here. So there's a spot here where there's no threads. That makes a big difference in how we attach our projects together. And you can see here it's kind of got this cone kind of shape head. This also has a Phillips, and this looks like a bigger Phillips. This right here was a number 2 Phillips, and that happens to be a number 3 Phillips. So to drive that in, you need the right screwdriver. You need a number 3 Phillips. And then we have this. This is what I call a lag screw. It's kind of thicker. Again, we got threads that go all the way up to underneath the head. Now the head on the bottom here is kind of a flat head, and the head has 6 sides on it. So this is a hex head. So you would use a wrench to turn this into your project. This right here, all right, this right here has got a hex head on it. It's kind of like got a little built-in washer. It's got threads going all the way down. But look at this. It's kind of got like a drill bit on the end of it. So this is what we call a self-tapping or self-drilling screw. And so this is used in soft metals. And the head here, I thought I picked one with, here we go. This one is got what we call a slotted head. So that's just use a regular slotted head screwdriver to turn that in. Now, the last one, the cherished last screw. This screw was a saving grace in construction this year. You can see in the shop we're building Adirondack chairs. So what we're doing is we're screwing hardwood together. Okay, makes a big difference if you're using softwood or hardwood. So this screw is very thin. It's thinner than our coarse drywall screw. Not by much, but it's a little bit thinner. It incorporates in it, I don't know if you can see that right there, but it's just got one little slice right there. That's called a number 17 point, and so this almost acts as a drill when we're screwing in. All right, so hopefully it prevents the board from splitting. It's got that real sharp point on it. Up here, remember we were talking about threads going all the way to underneath the head. Well, here the threads don't go all the way up, and it's got this texturing here, this knurling that actually kind of acts as a reamer or a drill when it's going in. So this is a pretty sophisticated screw, and also it's got definitely a different head. Okay, that's what we call a star or a Torx, and you can see the bit, how it fits in there. That's going to be a Torx. Before we had these screws, students were constantly splitting their projects and stripping out the screws. Now with these, it's totally changed how efficiently we can put together our Adirondack chairs. Everybody loves these, and you won't appreciate this screw until you use other screws and realize how hard it is to put the screw in. Alright, so we're going to use the drywall screw. It's really not meant for putting wood projects together. That, and it's because it's got these threads that go all the way to the top. So that's why we had to do our clearance hole. And when I say clearance hole, I'm talking about that right there. We're going to put the screw in from this way. All right, and so what happens is this screw really should kind of just fall right down through the top board. We don't want the screw to bite into the top board. We want to bite into whatever we're screwing into. All right, and we're going to use a screw gun. Okay, so this is not a drill. Okay, we've used a drill to make our clearance holes, but this is not meant for drilling at all. It's meant for screwing. Okay, it's called an impact driver. First thing I want to point out is that we put different bits in the end here. So I got a number 2 Phillips bit so that it's going to fit with our screws. How you get the bit in and out is this way. So see this right here? This little ring, you pull it forward and this thing pops right out. To put it in, you push it in, and now I can't pull this thing out. It's stuck in there. So in order to get it out, you pull the ring and it pops out. Alright, so we might have to do that. We might have to swap bits. Next thing I want to point out is here's the trigger. Alright, so you squeeze the trigger, make it go. You can see here this button, I'm pushing from the other side. Alright, so now it's in reverse. Now it's in forward. It doesn't tell you what reverse or forward is, right? But we know righty-tighty, if it's spinning towards the right when you have it in your hand, all right, that's how we're going to put our screws in. And if you need to take it out, you hit the button and go the other way. Last thing I want to point out is if you squeeze the trigger all the way, it goes fast. If you squeeze the trigger just a little ways, it goes slow. Alright, so I'm going to tell you when we're screwing our project together, we're going to go slow and hard, meaning, right, we're not going to pull the trigger all the way, and what we're going to do is we need to be pushing, right, we need to be pushing on the screw to make it go in, so I want you to push hard in that direction. So we're going to go slow, and we're pushing hard. So let's go ahead and do it. So we're going to start with our wall plate. So we have our wall plate just laying down right in front of us. This is the back of the wall plate, right? So your name is probably here someplace. Let me just show you what the front looks like. The front is when you see that, right? That's the front. This is the back. So what I've got is this is the back. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to spin this up. All right, so the long surface is going to get, we're going to rest it on the long surface. So I go ahead and I spin that up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bracket. Okay, I've got my bracket on there, and if I just point this out, right here are those holes. Right there's those holes. So you don't need to do this, but I'm just going to go ahead just so you can see it on my example. All right, I'm going to take the center of the holes. I'm going to try and line it up with the center of my bracket, and so I just go ahead and I push that together. And so this is where I want my bracket to be. All right, so I can see that. So the bracket is going to kind of fit in there nice. So before we attach this, what we're looking for is we want to make sure that the top of this is flush with the top of this, and that it seems like it makes a nice fit over here. Sometimes it's not, so we need to tune it up a little bit, but I think this one is ready to go. And so to make this flush with this, these two things flush, I set it down on the table. So right now they are flush because these things are sitting on the table. What might happen is you might get a little space right there, which is okay. Right, that little bit of space, okay. A lot of space, not so good. So here we go. So I've got that kind of lined up where I want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my screw. I've got my screw kind of on my screw bit. I'm going to line it up. I'm going to start it in that hole right there. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push slow and hard. And you hear that little rat-a-tat-tat. What we want to do is we want to sink this screw. It's got to be down below the surface of this board, so we need to sink that in a little bit. So I think I got it right there. This is probably the hardest thing that we're going to do in class this year. It is the hardest thing so far. So that little rat-a-tat-tat, that is a good sound. So I talked about the rat-a-tat-tat being a good sound. Let me show you this. That is not a good sound. What that is that this bit is not engaged with the screw head, and we call it stripping it out. Okay, so when we hear that sound, what we need to do is we need to slow down the speed, and we need to push harder. So here's our result. All right, here's the front of our wall plate. There's our bracket. We've got both sides ready to go. Now we need to do is introduce the shelf. So the shelf board is going to sit on top, right? Kind of like that. So again, we've got these holes. These holes will line up in about the middle of this. And then when we slide over here, we'll see they should be lined up about the middle of this. So with our wall plate, laying on its back on the table, what we do is we take our shelf. So we're looking at the small holes here. This is the bottom of the shelf. We just put that right there, and we are ready to screw this in. Same process we just did with the other part. I got it all lined up. This will probably require a partner. All right, and so We're going to go slow and hard, and we don't want to hear that sound. All right, that's the sound of stripping. We want to hear that rat-a-tat-tat sound. So what we're going to do is we've got 6 more screws to put in the top. So let's go ahead and we'll do that. All right, so I've got the brackets attached to the wall plate, the shelf board attached to the brackets. When it's done, we shouldn't see a lot of space in here or a lot of space over here. Notice, right, we've got some space here, we got some space here. That was designed in on purpose so that if these aren't exactly where they're supposed to be, you'll never tell the difference. And if I just spin this up, you can see what we've got here. We've got our screws down in the hole. Our next step would be to cover those things up, which will be a different video. In the back, we've got our screws here, and you can see it's just down below the surface a little bit. We kind of dimpled it in, and I'm not worried about covering these screws up because that's going to be up against the wall and you won't see those. So after we have all our pieces ready to go, you assemble it. Good luck.